जो ज़मीन पे सॉइल है उसके मुकाबले सी फ्लोर के सेडिमेंट्स में कार्बन स्टोर करने की कैपेसिटी इज़ मोर देन ट्वाइस। डीप सी में जो बायोडाइवर्सिटी है दैट इज़ यूनिक, एंड दैट बायोडाइवर्सिटी इज़ इंटरकनेक्टेड and it is very much susceptible. By the time they reach subtropical high pressure belt, the blocking effect of Coriolis force causes the wind to become perfectly west to east. Explain the formation of this atmospheric tricellular circulation. और दूसरा पार्ट है कि ये सर्कुलेशन की वजह से अर्थ लिविंग प्लैनेट कैसे बना। एक्सप्लेन विद एग्जांपल्स। हेलो फ्रेंड्स, तो वी आर डिस्कसिंग द क्वेश्चन पेपर ऑफ 2025 ज्योग्राफी ऑप्शनल. वी विल कंटिन्यू विद दैट. नाउ आई टोल्ड यू some of the questions were asked this year were applied in nature. They demanded the understanding of concepts. Some are factual in nature, like the question that we are going to discuss. What is deep sea mining? It is factual in nature. If you know the content, if you know it, you can write it. And some questions are also conceptual, matlab not applied, directly conceptual. We will discuss them also. So this is what is deep sea mining. See, deep sea mining refers to extraction of minerals from the seabed. Inside the seabed, seafloor, numerous minerals are deposited. So deep sea mining refers to the process of retrieval or extraction of minerals from the seabed, which are buried hundreds and thousands of meters below the seafloor. Now, deep sea mining target three main sources of minerals: polymetallic nodules, polymetallic sulfides, and third one is cobalt-rich crust. These are the three main sources that are deep sea mining targets to tap. Polymetallic nodules are potato shaped, containing various minerals like manganese, nickel, copper, cobalt, and certain traces of rare earth minerals. Polymetallic sulfides are also potato shaped. They have sulfur content. They contain copper, zinc, silver, and gold. Cobalt-rich crust is very important. It contains cobalt, manganese, nickel, lithium, and rare earth minerals. Quite significant amount of rare earth minerals. Now, why are we directing our focus towards these deep sea mining? See, presently we are in a phase of transition from the traditional fuels like fossil fuels to renewable energy sources. Now, these new technologies are known as low carbon technology. These are known as low carbon technology. Low carbon technologies whose carbon footprints are low. We are transitioning towards renewable energy sources, and these low carbon technology requires minerals which are found in huge concentration below the seabed. ये जो minerals हैं, they are required in low carbon technologies, and these technologies are heavily reliant on those minerals which are found in high concentration in the seabed. To make this transition to renewable energy smooth, countries are focusing on exploiting the seabed resources so that they can avail these mineral resources, which will enable them to transition towards renewable energy sources. Wind turbine बनानी है, solar panel बनाने हैं, उनमें जो minerals use होते हैं, they are found in high concentration in seabed. लेकिन साथ में एक रिस्क भी है. Deep sea mining can alter the marine ecosystem in significant way. जब हम डीप सी माइनिंग करेंगे, वी विल रिसोर्ट टू ड्रिलिंग ऑफ द सी फ्लोर. दिस कैन सिग्निफिकेंटली negatively bring about negative changes in the marine ecosystem. Now, what are the risks? अभी क्या रिस्क होंगे डीप सी माइनिंग के? द फुल रेंज ऑफ नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट ऑफ डीप सी माइनिंग cannot be ascertained as of now, because we have not yet started on a large scale, commercial scale. Deep sea mining has not been started, but still the scientific evidences point that this is going to adversely impact the marine ecosystem in a big way. What is known is that deep sea ecosystems are rich in unique biodiversity. Deep sea में जो biodiversity है, that is unique, and that biodiversity is interconnected, and it is very much susceptible to these external shocks. For example, in deep sea ecosystem, we find certain variety of organisms that are in existence since the evolution of life. तो बेसिकली जब से लाइफ इवॉल्व हुई थी, इन डीप सी इकोसिस्टम वी फाइंड वैरायटी ऑफ ऑर्गेनिजम्स दैट आर स्टिल इन एग्जिस्टेंस सिंस द एवोल्यूशन ऑफ लाइफ, एंड देयर आर न्यूमरस ऑर्गेनिजम्स व्हिच आर येट टू बी डिस्कवर्ड. इफ वी रिसोर्ट टू डीप सी माइनिंग, they all will be killed because of destruction of their habitat. Further, biodiversity loss mining site में नहीं होगा, but its impact will be felt far and wide. It is said these organisms which are yet to be studied, yet to be discovered, they will be killed even before their discovery. अब होता क्या है, when we resort to deep sea mining, we resort to drilling the ocean bed. While drilling the ocean bed, this will release huge plumes of sediments. Huge plumes of sediment will rise from the deep sea floor, and this will impact the organisms in the immediate vicinity. They will be killed, but they will not only impact, the impact of sediment plume will not be confined to the immediate vicinity. Rather, it will adversely impact the water quality. It will impact basically fisheries. It will have far-reaching impact hundreds of kilometers away from the mining site. Toxins that will be released in course of this mining will also adversely impact the organisms living in immediate vicinity. और वैसे भी deep sea floor is very calm. It's far removed from the disturbances that are taking place in the world. The noise, light, and vibration that will be generated by deep sea drilling, that will have adverse impact on organisms living far away from mining sites. Now, some of the areas in deep sea floor which are rich in minerals also happen to be rich in marine life. एक कोइंसिडेंस है कि सी फ्लोर में जहां पर मिनरल कंटेंट रिच है, वहां पर मरीन लाइफ भी रिच है एज कंपेयर टू अदर एरियाज. The areas with high mineral concentration also harbor disproportionately high, unique, and poorly understood species diversity as compared to other areas. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, जैसे नॉड्यूल्स हैं, हम लोग पॉलीमेटेलिक नॉड्यूल्स को एक्सपर्ट करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. दीज नॉड्यूल्स गेट फॉर्म्ड ओवर मिलियंस ऑफ ईयर्स and they happen to be the habitat of certain marine organisms. Marine life depending on these nodules as habitat would go into extinct if these nodules are destroyed. Corals living on cobalt-rich crust take thousands of years to form, but they will be immediately killed by the deep sea mining operations. Deep sea hydrothermal vents, hydrothermal fields are home to some of the most unique diversity on this planet. और इन पे क्या इम्पैक्ट होगा, इनके एक्सटिंक्ट होने का क्या इम्पैक्ट होगा, दैट इज नॉट येट फुली अंडरस्टूड. मच ऑफ द मरीन लाइफ इन डीप सी एरियाज इज यूनिक and has been used to produce important solutions for human well-being. Many medicines for cancer and vaccines have been derived from deep sea ecosystem. And if these deep sea ecosystems are destroyed because they have not been yet fully studied, so it may lead to major loss of those medicines which are yet to be discovered. So destruction of unknown life forms in deep sea areas, many of which have not been discovered or tested, could close off one of the most important source of medical breakthrough. Now, ocean is a major reservoir of carbon. 90% of the greenhouse gases that are released in atmosphere are absorbed by oceanic water, and the sinking currents carry that carbon deep to the sea floor, and in the sea floor that carbon is stored. Now it is said deep sea mining can significantly alter the carbon capture process of ocean. And if this process gets disturbed, it will lead to global warming on a much larger scale. The emerging evidence point that deep sea mining could disrupt carbon capture process of the ocean, potential contributing to global warming. जो sea floor के sediments होते हैं, they have the capability of storing carbon more than twice that of the soil on the land. जो जमीन पे soil है उसके मुकाबले sea floor के sediments में carbon store करने की capacity is more than twice. Now, disruption of the sea floor has already shown to reduce the carbon capture capability of the sea floor. और ये भी कहा जाता है कि deep sea floor में oxygen is being produced. Oxygen without the help of sunlight. Deep sea floor, इसे कहते हैं dark oxygen. Now, this arena still needs to be studied. मतलब हमने अभी स्टडी नहीं किया है, पूरा स्टडी करना है. डीप सी फ्लोर में डार्क ऑक्सीजन उसे कहते हैं, ऑक्सीजन दैट इज प्रोड्यूस्ड इन डीप सी फ्लोर विदाउट द हेल्प ऑफ सनलाइट. दिस विल अल्टर द प्रेजेंट अंडरस्टैंडिंग सिग्निफिकेंटली. अभी हम मानते हैं कि ऑक्सीजन इज मेनली प्रोड्यूस्ड बाय फोटोसिंथेसिस एंड अदर थिंग्स, बट डीप सी फ्लोर में जो डार्क ऑक्सीजन प्रोड्यूस होती है, दैट इज प्रोड्यूस विदाउट द हेल्प ऑफ सनलाइट, इज नोन एज ऑक्सीजन. डार्क ऑक्सीजन इज चैलेंजिंग the long held assumption how oxygen got formed on this planet. तो ये सारे issues हैं. These are the potential risks of deep sea mining. Now next question भी factual है. Man wildlife conflict. Question is, man wildlife conflict is increasing. Discuss the causes, consequences, and remedies. Now, basically, man wildlife conflict refers to negative interaction between man and wildlife, which has adverse consequences for man and his resources on one hand, as well as animal life and their habitat on the other. So, man wildlife conflict, MWC, or human wildlife conflict, HWC, human wildlife conflict, it refers to negative interaction between man and wildlife in a way that has adverse consequences both for man as well as wildlife and their habitat. क्या causes हैं? Simple, rapid pace of urbanization that is taking place presently, it is leading to diversion of forest land to non-forest purposes, and that is causing the shrinkage of wildlife habitat. Rapid pace of urbanization, जहाँ देखो western घाट्स पे basically lot of destruction has taken place because of real estate agents who have developed colonies. तो हो क्या रहा है, वर्ल्ड वाइड ये फिनोमेना हो रहा है, दिस अर्बनाइजेशन इज लीडिंग टू डाइवर्जन ऑफ फॉरेस्ट लैंड टू नॉन फॉरेस्ट पर्पसेस विच इज कॉजिंग श्रिंकेज ऑफ वाइल्ड लाइफ. सेकेंड इज agriculture, expansion of agriculture, especially in Amazon you can see, and Congo basin you can see, these are tropical rainforests which are undergoing serious decline because expansion of agriculture often takes place at the cost of forest land, at the cost of wild habitat. This brings man and wildlife into direct confrontation. When you will expand the agriculture at the cost of wildlife habitat, animals have no option other than moving out of their habitat. उनका habitat destroy हो जाएगा, they will move out, and man wildlife confrontation will increase. And the third major cause is rapid increase in population that is causing the human settlements to expand. Human settlement is expanding and getting located at the periphery of wildlife. Moreover, the local communities are diverting the forest land to cultivation, which is causing pressure on the existing natural resources, leading to man wildlife confrontation. और सबसे बड़ी बात तो ये है कि वर्ल्ड वाइड जो प्रोटेक्टेड एरियाज हैं, प्रोटेक्टेड एरियाज विच आर एक्सक्लूसिवली फॉर वाइल्ड लाइफ इज लेस देन 10%. प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया इज लेस देन 10%. मतलब अफ्रीकन लायंस का 40% अफ्रीकन लायंस एंड 70% ऑफ एशियन एलिफेंट रेंजेस लाई आउटसाइड प्रोटेक्टेड एरिया. 35% of tiger range in India lies outside protected area. Globally, 70% of elephant range lies outside protected area. 40% of lion range lies outside protected area. We need to increase protected area. Now, these were the causes: lack of protected area, urbanization, expansion of agriculture, and basically increasing human population are the major causes for man-wildlife conflict. Consequences are very adverse both for humans as well as wildlife. When they come into close proximity, basically killing of these wildlife animals increases, maybe because of preemptive killing, डर की वजह से, and also because of these killings are because of retaliatory killing. These animals injure the local people, and retaliation, local people kill those wild animals. So human wildlife can have detrimental impact on wildlife and human society both, because people might resort to killing of these animals in case of self-defense, or they may resort to killing because of revenge, that is basically a retaliatory measure or preemptive measure that may lead to extinction of wildlife. On the other hand, human communities are also adversely impacted because wildlife may injure them, may lead to loss of life of local people, may lead to damage of crops. They may kill livestock population of local people. They may destroy the property of local people. So local population may also be at loss. Impact on equity भी है, because what happens कि the economic and psychological cost of living with wildlife falls on those people who are living in proximity to wildlife areas, while those living away, they are having no economic or psychological cost. So those people who are living in close proximity to these wildlife areas, so this economic and psychological cost of living in proximity to wildlife areas fall on people who are living in close proximity, while the benefit of species survival are distributed to all communities. तो जो लोग पास रह रहे हैं उनके ऊपर they have to bear the brunt. अच्छा, in case of human wildlife conflict, farmer may lay blame on government for protecting these perpetrators who are causing damage to their life and property, whereas wildlife practitioner may lay the claim on farmer who is destroying the wildlife habitat. So mutual blame game चलता रहता है. सॉल्यूशन क्या है इसका? सॉल्यूशन सिंपली ये है कि बेसिकली लोकल पीपल शुड बी मेड अवेयर अबाउट द सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ दिस बायोडाइवर्सिटी, वाइल्ड लाइफ, and protected areas must be increased, and local people should be involved in that protection of wildlife. Unless the accountability or onus is shifted to the local population living in the vicinity of wildlife, wildlife protection is not possible. And secondly, the protected areas and the local communities in those living within those protected areas should be given more rights so that they can have their livelihood easily. तो ये दो क्वेश्चन फैक्चुअल थे, ये तुम नेट पे भी आराम से मिल जाएंगे तुमको. थर्ड क्वेश्चन, ये थोड़ा कंसेप्चुअल है, थोड़ा सा ही है. इज एग्जामिन द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ एटमॉस्फेरिक ट्राइसेलुलर सर्कुलेशन. फेरल का जो ट्राइसेलुलर मेरिडियन सर्कुलेशन था, एक्सप्लेन द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ दिस ट्राइसेलुलर मेरिडियन सर्कुलेशन एंड डिस्क्राइब विद एग्जांपल्स इट्स इम्पैक्ट इन मेकिंग अर्थ अ लिविंग प्लैनेट. तो पहले तो उन्होंने पूछा है कि ट्राइसेलुलर सर्कुलेशन समझाओ, फॉर्मेशन कैसे हो, सेलुलर एटमॉस्फेरिक circulation, how this circulation gets formed, simple है, explain the formation of this atmospheric tricellular circulation. और दूसरा पार्ट है कि ये सर्कुलेशन की वजह से अर्थ लिविंग प्लैनेट कैसे बना, explain with examples. See, according to tricellular meridian circulation of Ferrel, there are 3 interlocking cells of atmospheric circulation found in each hemisphere. There are 3 interlocking cells of atmospheric circulation found in each hemisphere. Now, this is equatorial low pressure belt. This is subtropical high pressure belt. And this is subpolar low pressure belt. And this is polar high. According to tricellular meridian circulation, ऐसे ही साउथ में भी है, likewise in southern hemisphere also, because of heating, intense heating in equatorial region, air rises up to tropopause. Tropopause is slanting towards pole. Because of intense heating, air rises along the equatorial low pressure belt. This rising air causes copious rainfall. This rising air causes copious rainfall in equatorial region. And on reaching the tropopause, it diverts towards north and south. This, as it diverts towards north in northern hemisphere because of Coriolis force, it gets deflected towards its right hand side. And these winds moving in the upper atmosphere are known as antitrades. Antitrades. The direction of antitrades in northern hemisphere will be this, southwest to northeast. And as they move towards pole, because of increasing Coriolis force, they get deflected more and more towards right. And by the time they reach subtropical high pressure belt, that is 25 to 30 north and 25 to 30 south, by the time they reach subtropical high pressure belt, the blocking effect of Coriolis force causes the wind to become perfectly west to east. And because of radiational cooling in the upper atmosphere, this air becomes cold, dense and heavy. As a result, it starts sinking along subtropical high pressure belt. This antitrades, by the time it moves to 25 to 30, because of Coriolis force turns it towards right hand side in northern hemisphere and makes this wind west to east. It starts moving from west to east. This is called blocking effect of Coriolis force. Along with that, it undergoes radiational cooling at high altitude. It becomes cold, dense and heavy. As a result, it starts sinking along subtropical high pressure belt. As a result of sinking air, atmosphere is kept free from clouds and abundant insolation reaches subtropical high pressure belt. This sinking air gets adiabatically heated and becomes very dry. Because of adiabatic heating, it becomes very dry. Therefore, most of the world's deserts are found in subtropical high pressure belt. Equatorial region are in receipt of heavy rainfall because of rising air. Here, as the antitrades sink, it gets adiabatically heated. Because of sinking air, clouds are absent, abundant insolation is there. So hot deserts are found because sinking air is devoid of moisture. It gets adiabatically heated. So the moisture holding capacity is used. So this air becomes very dry. As this dry air descends and abundant insolation, it creates deserts. And on reaching the surface, it again diverts towards equator in the form of surface trade winds. And these trade winds, while they are the result of sinking of anti-trades, this as a result, when they sink over subtropical high pressure belt, if any water body is present, these sinking air will absorb all the moisture and they move away in the form of trade winds as well as westerlies. Since they are having huge moisture holding capacity, when they sink on the surface, whatever moisture is present on the surface, they absorb the moisture. As a result, they have huge moisture present in them when they blow as trade winds or westerlies. As a result, they cause copious rainfall. Trade winds cause copious rainfall on the eastern side of tropical lands, that is making the land area covered with vegetation and good for economic agriculture activity. And these westerlies, when this after sinking, when they move away in the form of westerlies, they bring moisture to the western coast of higher middle latitudes. And because of this moisture, the temperature of the western part of higher middle latitudes, the temperature is moderated. These westerlies have moderating impact. देखो लंदन का या वेस्टर्न फ्रांस का वेदर कितना moderate है, because these westerlies cause rainfall and they reduce the severity of winters in these higher latitudes. And trade winds bring copious rainfall on the eastern side of the continents, thus ensuring tropical maritime climate. Now, this entire cell is known as Hadley cell. Hadley cell plays a very important role in distributing the surplus heat from tropical regions to middle latitudes and high latitudes. All these cells they function in unison. So this is Hadley cell, where the surface winds are in the form of northeast trade or southeast trade, and the anti-trades are exactly opposite in the form of southwest winds in the northern hemisphere and northwest winds in the southern hemisphere. First cell is this Hadley cell. Hadley cell is thermally direct. It is thermally induced. Here the air is rising because of heating. Next cell is Ferrel cell. Ferrel cell is dynamically induced. Here the air rises along the subpolar low pressure belt because of Earth's rotation. And on reaching tropopause, the air diverges towards poles and towards equator. This equatorward moving wind is known as anti-westerlies. And on converging with anti-trades, it sinks on the surface, and on the surface it blows towards subpolar low pressure belt in the form of westerlies. Now, studies have revealed that these anti-westerlies actually don't exist in real atmosphere, because according to this model, anti-westerlies in the upper atmosphere, they will be found exactly opposite to the surface westerlies. But in actual atmosphere, when it is studied, it is found there is no anti-westerlies. Rather, in place of anti-westerlies, here we find westerly flow in the upper atmosphere. But this model successfully explains the surface movement of wind. These westerly winds, which are the result of sinking of air, they are full of moisture. And on the poleward margin, these winds converge with polar easterlies. These polar easterlies and westerlies converge. As a result of this conversion, temperate cyclones are generated. These temperate cyclones are responsible for basically the entire rainfall that takes place in middle and high latitudes. Moreover, it is this convergence, this westerlies, when they converge with polar easterlies, they lead to the formation of polar front jet stream in the upper troposphere in this region. This polar front jet stream in these cold areas, thermal inversion is a natural phenomena. Whatever pollutant is released, Delhi में देख लो winters में inversion की वजह से पूरा pollutant get piled up below the level of inversion. It becomes difficult to breathe. और सोचो in high latitudes पे countries में industrial revolution कब से आया हुआ है, और these are located in extremely cold areas. तो how the people are surviving? They are surviving because of this polar front jet stream. This polar front jet stream, because this jet stream induces vertical circulation. This polar front jet stream, which is the result of convergence of westerlies and polar easterlies, this polar front jet stream induces vertical movement of air, which removes the impurities from these areas. So this model successfully explains the convergence of westerlies and polar easterlies, which lead to the formation of polar front jet streams, which remove the impurities from these areas. This is Ferrel cell. Ferrel cell. Third cell is polar cell. Polar cell is again thermally induced. From polar high pressure belt, polar easterlies emerge, and reaching subpolar low pressure belt, they rise. After rising, it again divert towards pole, and this upper winds known as anti-polar easterlies, they are moving exactly opposite to surface polar easterlies, these anti-polar easterlies, and they sink over polar high. This sinking further enhances the high pressure prevailing in polar high. As a result, this sinking creates stability. This sinking air creates stability and basically intensifies the high pressure, which is required for the पोलर फ्रंट दिस पोलर ईस्टर्लीज टू ब्लो. तो इसका सिग्निफिकेंस ये है इस पूरे मॉडल का कि इट हैज एंश्योर्ड डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ equitable distribution of heat from across the globe, because surplus heat received in tropical region, equatorial region, is transferred to middle latitudes and high latitudes. Because of this surface and upper atmosphere circulation, these cells ensure vertical circulation. They explain not only the surface movement of winds but also the upper movement of winds. These three cells ensure that the tropical heat is distributed towards higher latitudes, making those areas habitable. In the absence of these three interlocking cells, the surface heat would not have got distributed and the polar region higher latitudes would have been rendered inhabitable. Second, this ensures adequate rainfall in equatorial region, and this explains the reason for existence of deserts in subtropical regions. And this sinking air basically सबसे ज़्यादा evaporation deserts में होता है. This sinking air absorbs moisture, and as a result the trade winds and westerlies, which are the result of the sinking air, are having copious moisture and causes rainfall in the regions in which they blow, thus ensuring the survival of people in these regions. So this is the significance. This is how this tricellular atmospheric circulation has made this planet habitable. पहले समझा दो कौन ये तीन सेल हैं और इनका क्या रोल है in influencing the weather and climate that has made Earth a habitable planet.